Hello, potential students in our counselor education program. My name is Dr. Keith Wilson. I am program chair and also the director of graduate studies and counselor education. We're definitely glad that you can attend this webinar. We're excited to give you the information so that you can make a better decision on selecting a great university in which we think we are. First, let's look at a brief outline for today. Again, thanks for your interest in the counselor education program at the University of Kentucky. First, we're going to talk about the delivery method for our program. We're going to look at the accreditation and licensure requirements for at least one of the specializations in the program. Of course, we have two, and we will talk about those two specializations a little bit as well. We're also going to give you a good idea about the time to completion for many of our students in the entry-level program, as we call it. Then next, we're going to look at practicum and internship kind of details. Now, we call practicum and internship fieldwork. So you may hear me kind of reference fieldwork, and I'm talking about either practicum and internship or practicum or internship. Then next, we're going to look at how to apply to our program. It's kind of important because we get a lot of questions from potential students asking about what should they include in a letter application, for example. We're going to cover that briefly. Next, we're going to look at the costs and also financial aid for the program. And finally, we're going to end up with a Q&A. So let's get started here. Our program is totally online. Most of the classes that we offer are asynchronous, and we're going to look at the difference between asynchronous and synchronous in a moment. And one of the things that we're proud of that many students complete their internship online as well. And of course, that will depend, meaning completing your internship and or your practicum, that would depend on the agency's requirements, right? So many agencies are both face-to-face and online. And boy, we are looking at the trend where many of the agencies are just totally online with their behavioral health system. Accreditation. We're accredited through CACREP. CACREP stands for the Council for Accreditation of Counseling and Related Educational Programs. CACREP, we are accredited by CACREP through October the 31st, 2030. Of course, we do plan on renewing that accreditation. We were accredited by CACREP back in 2016. But first, we were accredited by CORE. That's an organization that accredits rehabilitation counseling. And so CORE joined CACREP, and so we decided to get accredited by CACREP, and we're no longer accredited by CORE. So all of our programs, in fact, are accredited by CACREP, except for the undergraduate program. And undergraduate programs do not have accreditation. And of course, this reflects the quality of education that we have here at the University of Kentucky for some time. And many of the CACREP accredited programs across the United States, and I'm talking now specifically with Kentucky, it meets Kentucky and other states' requirements for licensure. And we're going to talk about that also just a little later. And if you want to look up whether your state will match the kind of requirements of CACREP, which we are, and it would be really nice for you to go and look at the authorization of licensure, which that link is also presented in the fourth bullet. And it's a really nice site. You can actually look at the states, of course, that would accept the kind of curriculum that CACREP provide. And then you also see, in many instances, countries that we're probably looking to see if CACREP accreditation would serve those countries as well. There are two specializations in counselor education. We call it our entry-level program. There's clinical mental health counseling, which is to evaluate clients' mental, behavioral, and also emotional health concerns. And then we have rehabilitation counseling. Our rehab counseling program is ranked in the top 10 in the United States. I think currently we stand at 6th. Now, when we start looking at credentials, folks who are looking to enroll in our clinical mental health counseling program, they're looking to get licensed, right? For a particular state, either LPC. In Kentucky, it is LPCC. And so once you finish all of your curriculum or coursework, then you are able to go on and begin the supervised clinical hours for your licensure. Rehabilitation counseling, there is no quote unquote license for rehab counseling. When folks enter the rehab counseling specialization, they would like to get certification, and that is to be a CRC, a certified rehabilitation counselor. Now, I do want to explain briefly that there is a lot of overlap between these two specializations, clinical mental health counseling and also rehabilitation counseling. And when you're in the clinical mental health counseling specialization, you might think, okay, you're going to be sitting down and kind of just talking to folks who might be experiencing some kind of emotional or behavioral health concern. But I think one thing that we want to keep in mind is that when you are looking at folks with disabilities, we're talking about not only behavioral health, emotional kind of disabilities, but physical disabilities as well. So you may be counseling a person who may have some kind of physical disability. And many times physical disabilities lead to emotional kind of behavioral health concerns. So you can actually be looking at a person with a physical disability who needs some therapeutic intervention, right? In the clinical mental health setting. And that's the overlap. That is truly the overlap. And we cannot separate those two areas completely because there's a lot of overlap. And of course, the locations where you do your work would be a little different. But in terms of working with folks with disabilities, that's the major overlap, right? With clinical mental health counseling and also rehabilitation counseling as well. And how will you engage in your classes? Well, we have 17 core classes. That is 75% of our curriculum. Now, out of the core classes, we have 6 that are synchronous and we have 11 that's asynchronous. Now, here I will explain the difference between synchronous and asynchronous. Synchronous is where you will have a class, but you will be responding not in real time. Okay, that's why it's asynchronous. You will more than likely have lectures recorded by the instructor or some other person in our program, and you will be given deadlines for assignments, and you work at your own pace to complete the assignments. However, you do have deadlines, right, to complete those assignments. And the interaction usually with asynchronous, there are all kinds of discussion boards and things of that nature that professors use so that the professors can engage in interacting with the students. And also, you will be able to interact with your fellow students that way as well. Now, the synchronous mode of delivery, which means that you are encountering real-time lectures, conversations, interactions with the professors and also the students in the class. Usually that's via Zoom, right? And when you have the synchronous classes have a set time that you meet once a week usually. And during that time, the professor will give the lecture and have the interactions, again, real time. Asynchronous, you don't have those interactions real time. But with synchronous, you do. We're actually trying to incorporate more synchronous classes in our curriculum. That's been one of the things that students have asked us to look at. And we have incorporated, I think, over the last 3 years, one. We added one synchronous class to our modality, if you will. Next, we're going to look at the time to completion. And the time to completion, it just really depends. Full-time, that's 9 credit hours or more. That's 3 credit hours. In fact, that's 3 courses or more. That's considered full-time. Part-time is usually 6 credit hours or less. Most students complete our program within 8 semesters. That's about 3 years. And most of all the requirements that you want to have complete our degree, and it's a graduate school kind of requirement, is 6 years. That's I will call it the statute of limitations, right? You want to complete your requirements within 6 years. And our students do, for the most part, complete those requirements within 6 years. And if you don't, you can request an extension of 2 years. And then after you get that extension, let's say you're running up against 8 years and you just ask for another extension, right? So you have, in actuality, 10 years before you need to complete your degree. But if that happens to any one of you and you decide to first come to our program and be accepted, keep that in mind, that you have 6 years to complete your degree requirements, but it can be extended by 2-year intervals twice, right? That leaves a total of 10 years to complete your degree. The curriculum. Most of our courses are offered once per year. We have one class, maybe 2, that's offered twice a year. I can only think of one, quite frankly. That class, a very, very popular class that folks who are in their clinical mental health counseling track, specialization, and also the rehabilitation counseling specialization take that particular class, as well as individuals from all across the campus. Now you have the accelerated option, and I'm going to explain this a little more. We talked about prior the kind of average time that students complete the degree in our program. But we have the accelerated option. Now, the accelerated option, students are going to take between 12 and 15 credit hours to complete the degree. And for rehab counseling students, that's going to be 4 semesters. And for clinical mental health counseling students, that's going to be 5 semesters. We decided about 4 years ago to give the clinical mental health counseling students an additional semester because many times we've been looking at some of the outcomes of classes and other demographics, and folks in the clinical mental health counseling track typically are a little younger than folks in the rehab counseling track. And so we want to make sure that they have time enough to get all of the necessary information they need to pass not only the fieldwork examination, but be successful in our program. And they are successful in our program, like the students in rehabilitation counseling as well. And of course, all of our courses are listed on the web. I'm going to underscore that. All of our courses in our program is totally online. Everything online. And we do not have a residential requirement. So you don't have to come on campus once a year and stay a week to get that residential requirement. So we don't have that requirement. And I think many schools do. And that's okay for them, but we decided not to have that as a requirement for our students. You also see on this particular slide, slide 8, you can view our student handbook. And on page 11 through 16, I think it is, it lists the classes. Also, it lists the mode of delivery, whether that class is asynchronous or synchronous. Also, it lists the duration of the classes. Some of our classes are 8 weeks, some are 16 weeks, We used to have a class that was 4 weeks. Now that class is 8 weeks. So I don't think we have any other class that's 4 weeks. In fact, we don't. So they're all going to be either 8 weeks or 16 weeks. And we might have in the summer abbreviated courses that might be 6 weeks as well. Because in the summer, most of the courses are abbreviated just a little bit, maybe 1 or 2 weeks. Field work, practicum, and internship. For practicum, that's 200 hours. An internship, that is 600 hours. Of course, you take the practicum first, and then you take the internship, usually in your last semester. Both the practicum and also the internship is 1 semester. Now, every now and then, we have students who would like to extend the internship to go over 2 semesters, and that's okay. We allow that. But most of the time, students complete that internship in 1 semester. And you're probably wondering, well, how would the locations be determined for the internship and the practicum? Well, there are a list of kind of details that you want to keep in mind, but one essential would be the qualifications of the on-site supervisor. And they're different for both rehabilitation counseling students and also for clinical mental health counseling students, right? And so for example, here, the clinical mental health counseling students would need to have a supervisor that have at least LPC, a certain number of years of experience. Differently, right? With the rehab counseling students, they have to have a supervisor, site supervisor, right, for their internship or practicum that would have the CRC with X number of years of experience. All this information is detailed in our student handbook, which you probably have a copy of. So that's one of the first things that you want to look at when you're looking at the internship or the practicum. Our students also are responsible primarily to find the internship and practicum sites. Most of our students have no problems actually locating a good practicum or internship site for themselves. And we can facilitate that information. Once folks get admitted to our program, we have what's called the Student Advising Center. And it kind of takes students step by step on what you need to do first when you're looking for a practicum or internship site. And it tells you the things that you want to start to do sooner rather than later. And the only thing that usually causes a problem when students have concerns about an internship or practicum site is that they wait at the last minute to try to find it. And that's never a good idea. That's never a good idea. But most of our students are successful in, again, not only finding an internship and practicum site, but being successful in their practicums and also their internships. And so now we're talking about the field work and also the practicum and internship requirements. Mentioned about 1 semester. How do you locate or find the internship or practicum sites? We kind of talked about that briefly. Again, this information is detailed in our student handbook. And one question might be, can you use your current employment for a practicum and internship site? Yes, you can, right? Yes, you can. We usually ask students to see if they can do something else a little different than they would normally do in their regular job. But yes, you can use your current employment for your practicum and internship site. But keep in mind about the credentials that your site supervisor would need to have in order to use any site, right? Whether it's rehab counseling specialization or the clinical mental health counseling specialization. And that is deemed by our accreditation, right? So folks need to be supervised appropriately and have the appropriate credentials. The internships and also the practicum, depending on the agency, can be completed online. Again, that is not a requirement from the program, but when you're looking at sites, you want to find out Do they have that option for you? Do they have both options, or maybe virtual and face-to-face? Some do, right? So that would be on our students to actually seek those locations out and move forward in their field work. Clinical mental health counseling licensure requirements. Of course, this will be dependent on the state that you would like to work in. Again, on our website, you have a link that would take you to the states that we fit relative to our CACREP accreditation curriculum with those states. LPC laws, and there are laws, right? And so you can look at that information on the site. Many times what happened, and right now I'm thinking about Florida. All right, I think in Florida there may be one class that Florida require folks to have that we don't offer, not only in our program, but we can't find it that's offered at the university at the graduate level. And I think that's a human sexuality course. There are several undergraduate, but then if we did offer it, it would have to be offered online for our students, right? So that's one of the requirements. And I'm thinking there are 2 or 3 states I'm trying to remember, but Florida that's come up, I think, in the recent history. Yeah, but students can still actually enroll in our program, but make sure you check with your state board to find out if you can take that class, and you ask the program, you can take that class at another university and transfer that particular human sexuality course back to University of Kentucky. We would accept it. It has to be a graduate level class, of course, and also it has to be 3 credit hours, right? But definitely a graduate level course. If it's a quarter course, which we usually don't run into. In fact, I haven't run into that in almost 20 years. That may be a concern, but yeah, we will accept that course to be transferred in. How to apply? Our application deadline is April the 1st. And of course, you need letters of recommendation, 3. And of course, you want to be able to get past supervisors or instructors, to use as references. And if you've been out for a while and you've lost touch, for example, with some of your professors, you could use folks who supervise you, right? Again, and you can just use 3 of those individuals to supervise you as references. And then what happens when you apply to our program, you're only going to submit the email addresses of the folks that you would like to be your reference. And then the university will send them a form, right, via email, so they can complete that reference on you. And it will be submitted in your packet. A resume, updated resume or CV, a personal statement as well. Personal statement is really important. And that's where you sell yourself. You kind of tell the program, why are you interested in the program? What kind of experiences do you have that would facilitate you being in the program, right? And sometimes folks just talk about, I've always thought about clinical mental health counseling or rehab counseling for a while. Or they say, my exposure was in music arts therapy, but then I volunteered at a camp for summer, and so I got interested in rehab counseling or clinical mental health counseling. So yeah, it's a very individual exercise. We don't see personal statements that are exactly the same. They're all individual, right? There's no one that's going to be the same, right? It's going to be totally different. So it's your statement on selling yourself into getting into the program. There are no interviews this semester, so we will not be interviewing students for our program. We'll be looking only at the information you submit via application, and there are no DRE score requirements for our program. Next, we're going to talk about the cost and the kind of financial aid. And our tuition right now is $737 per credit hour, right? And that's regardless of the state that you live in. And so our students who are in our program, they're getting the in-state rate for tuition. If you're enrolled in full-time, right, as a full-time student, that rate is $6,619. That is full-time status of +9 credit hours, right? Right. So that's you can take 3 courses, 4 courses, 5 courses, right? And that will be the tuition rate that you will pay when enrolled full time. Scholarships and other kind of funding information are available, and you have the link there as well. And keep in mind that many of the things that you might be able to see, you won't be able to see some of the information until you become accepted into our program and officially a student, right? Speaking of scholarships, many scholarships, in fact, most scholarships require graduate students to be full-time. That is, again, 9+ credit hours enrolled. So many times if you're a part-time student, again, that's less than what? That's less than, that's 6 hours or less, right? Those students will not be eligible for most, I didn't say all, but for most scholarships. The GI Bill, there's a form, there's a link there that you can click on. But one thing about the GI Bill, and there are other kinds of veteran statuses relative to payment and scholarships, that you have to complete these forms every semester, right? Complete them every semester. And on that link is going to actually show you 5 or 6 different categories that might fit your status if you are a veteran or even active duty, quite frankly. And those benefits are available to you here at the University of Kentucky. That was very quick. I'm looking now is there's questions and answers. And so, yeah, at this time we will definitely have maybe some questions that you might have for me. Again, thank you so much for your interest in the Counselor Education program. And hopefully, this webinar made it easier for you to make a decision, because we do understand that you have choices, right? And I just hope that this webinar facilitated that for you.